I am Alice Racine, a CIA interrogator operating undercover at a community center in the Islamic quarter of London. One day, a young Muslim man named Jud tipped me off about 9 suspicious Egyptians living together in an apartment. I immediately passed this information to Emily Knowles, my MI5 intelligence superior, during a meeting in the park that night. Emily stated that they had raided the apartment, but the Egyptians had already fled. Emily said she had a lead and would continue the investigation, and I made her promise to call as soon as she had news. But that same night, I discovered bitterly that the Egyptians were just a bunch of students. It was a total deception. Depressed, I went for a drink, and news of the horrific bombings in Paris flooded back. Those memories still haunt me every day, which is also why I had to withdraw from field operations. Meanwhile, in a restaurant, a young informant named Latif was brought to meet the extremist cleric Yazid Khalil. He had to memorize a message to deliver to an unknown individual about an impending terrorist attack, and Khalil made him repeat the message over and over. Latif got on his rickety motorcycle to deliver the message, but halfway there, he was dragged into a van by a group of men. At the same time, in a house, a frantic housekeeper discovered the body of a man named Jimmy, a CIA interrogator hired to question Latif. Bob Hunter, CIA European branch director, was called and briefed on the incident. He learned of a plot targeting American interests in Britain, and an American jihadist named David Mercer was the recipient of the message, who would not act without instructions from Khalil. Agents also discovered it was a biological attack, so Bob had to cancel his dinner with his wife to dive into work. As for me, I went to a fancy restaurant to meet again with my mentor and former head of the CIA Paris branch, Eric Lash. After a few drinks and a heartfelt conversation, Lash suggested I return to field work because he knew I wasn't happy with my current job. Moreover, the CIA desperately needed my skills. But I still felt guilty about the Paris bombings and thought he was crazy to trust me again. But Lash reassured me that it wasn't my fault and that I should learn to forgive myself, otherwise the past would forever block my path. Meanwhile, with Latif captured, Hunter and his team planned to replace him and the message with one of their own to stop Mercer. With Jimmy dead, Hunter wanted more options but was told only I was suitable. Other agents were hesitant knowing I had psychological issues, and my past was revealed. I grew up in a violent household, had uncontrollable anger issues, and a criminal record. I was later recruited and graduated with honors. However, during the Paris incident, I failed to extract crucial information from the bomber, leading to a tragedy. Despite the relatively low death toll, I was severely traumatized and wanted to retire, but Lash convinced me to take the London job. 2 years out of an interrogation room, Hunter believed they had no other choice but to use my skills. CIA operative Frank Sutter approached me on a bus and gave me a CIA access code. This led me to an appointment at a specific location and time, where I met Sutter again. He spoke of Latif and wanted me to extract the identification protocol from him. I hesitated, but Sutter insisted I had no choice as it was an order from the European branch director. Sutter drove me to a secure building, where other agents were waiting with Latif bound in another room. I entered the room to begin the interrogation, but Latif pretended not to speak English until I caught his reaction when I mentioned calling for a translator. He relented, so I removed his cuffs for his comfort. He claimed to be a normal Muslim working for Allah when he was apprehended, but I noticed he never asked why he was arrested, indicating he knew. I then showed him photos of a bombing and left him alone to think. Agents outside thought I was wasting time, but it was all part of my strategy. I returned quickly, accusing him of collaborating with Yazid Khalil for the earlier Sea Empress tanker attack and threatened to put him in prison. Latif frantically denied everything until I produced a photo of him meeting Khalil. Believing he was framed, Latif confessed to only having the task of delivering a message, but I feigned disbelief and was about to leave when Latif swore he could prove his innocence. I returned, promising to protect him if he told the whole truth, and Latif began to confess everything. I revealed to Sutter that the identification rule was a directive, but it was incomplete because they needed to know the collection the quote came from, and Latif hadn't received the meeting location message yet. Then, I received a call and went to the bathroom. On the other end was Ed Romley, a CIA agent, asking me to come and interrogate a prisoner. I slowly realized Sutter and his men weren't CIA, and I had been deceived. I returned to the room. Sutter asked me to write down the collection's name, but I caught a glimpse of a man preparing a gun behind me. Using my quick wits, I said I doubted Latif's testimony and wanted to interrogate him further, so Sutter reluctantly agreed. I went back to Latif and whispered to inform him that they planned to kill both of us. Latif quickly understood and started rambling, but then Sutter heard a strange noise and rushed into the room. Latif seemed to have escaped, but I quickly disarmed and took down the two closest men, then professionally shot through the wall, taking down another. The remaining men cautiously recoiled. Latif crawled out of the closet and I sprayed bullets all over the room to cover our escape. We made it to the stairwell, but Sutter's men killed Latif, forcing me to leave him behind. Meanwhile, in the basement of a building, David Mercer asked a scientist to verify the virus strain he received, then paid the delivery person. That night, Eric was just getting home when he was startled to see me in his apartment. I frantically explained that I might have aided a terrorist named Frank Sutter, posing as CIA, and recounted everything that had happened at the hotel. Lash saw I was injured and rushed to help me. At the same time, Hunter overheard the call Ed made to me and had no idea what was going on. His team tracked the van that had captured Latif, but only found the whole group dead, and they began searching for traces of the attack. I explained to Lash that Sutter only had half the rule. He knew the CIA would want me back, but knowing the agency had been compromised, he advised me to go into hiding. I went to change, but immediately heard a loud noise downstairs. I ran down to check and saw Lash shot, and gunfire started to echo throughout the house. I pulled him to safety, trying to hold them off with my gun. In pain, Lash gave me the address of one of his houses and told me to go there to hide. I barely made it out of the room before I saw them finish off Lash. Meanwhile, Mercer asked his scientist to put the virus into a special device that could disperse it as an invisible mist. The scientist suggested testing it, but Mercer wanted to leave right away. A young delivery man then placed the device into a fake toolbox before riding off on his bicycle. A short while later, some children entered the lab to retrieve a ball, inadvertently exposing themselves to the virus. I reached the apartment building, but upon entering the room, I found a guy stealing things inside. I pointed my gun at him, removed his mask, and dragged him into the bedroom, tying his hands. I found his papers. His name was Jack Alcott, and his incessant chatter and obnoxious British accent made me tape his mouth shut to keep him quiet. I then left him there, taking a moment to breathe and collect my thoughts about what was happening. Next, I broke into the utility room, reconnected the phone lines to another room before calling the CIA. I got in touch with Hunter, who said a tactical team was on its way. I explained that I was being pursued by the killers of Latif and wondered how Frank Sutter obtained CIA control codes. They wanted me to surrender, but just then, I saw the room where I had reconnected the phone lines was raided by police. I left Jack a knife to free himself and rushed out of the apartment, but the police had surrounded the building. I hid in the laundry room and was discovered by 2 police officers. I tried to resist and was eventually tasered, but Jack appeared and took down the 2 officers before helping me escape. Hunter contacted Knowles, angry her people let me escape, but she questioned him for conducting an illegal operation on her territory. She thought I had helped someone, but wasn't sure who, and didn't believe I was a traitor, urging Hunter to find the mole. I woke up in an abandoned warehouse with Jack. He revealed he overheard my call. It sounded serious, so he couldn't leave me. From his demeanor, I knew he was trained and realized he was a Marine with 4 tours in Iraq. He wanted to know what was happening in London involving the CIA and a dead prisoner, but I advised him not to get involved. Jack thought he was already involved, and with his skills, he could be of assistance. I hesitated, even pointing a gun at him. But Jack was unfazed, even suggesting he might be the only friend I had at that moment. Ed received reports from the van scene and was awaiting further analysis to clear me as a suspect, but Hunter refused to clear my name until I stopped running and was interrogated. Jack accompanied me to Jud's apartment, where I met his wife and daughter. After speaking with Jud, I got the address of the restaurant Khalil's mother frequented for lunch. We got a ride from Jud. He said goodbye to his family before driving us both in his taxi. On the way, he and Jack started chatting about football. I finally managed to contact Emily. I didn't have much time to explain, but needed her to track Latif's mobile phone. Jack and I quickly reached the restaurant. Jack went in first and was shown to a table by the owner. Outside, I told Jud to keep an eye on where the restaurant owner went when he stepped out. Then I went inside, introduced myself as someone from the community center sent by Latif's mother to help him as the police were looking for him. The owner excused himself for a moment, and I informed Emily. Outside, he made a phone call about me, and Emily traced the call to a car park. Inside the restaurant, Jack and I stalled for time before I gave the signal, and he made his move. He quickly subdued the 2 guards at a rear door before I called out for Yazid Khalil, and he appeared. Outside, Umud followed the restaurateur to an apartment building. I sat down with Yazid Khalil, explaining that Latif was dead and that there were those who sought to usurp his messaging protocol to replace it with their own. I wanted to know his message, but Khalil revealed that he was ordering Mercer to stand down. I found it strange, as he wasn't usually one for soft stances, but Khalil explained that he'd been resentful of the West in his youth, but was now tired of the various groups corrupting his religion and used his influence to prevent attacks. I couldn't rely on his influence alone and asked for his targets and meeting location, but Khalil refused to break his rules. Meanwhile, Emily reached the parking lot and found Latif's motorcycle and cell phone. Jack and I left the restaurant, and I called, Jud for his location. We met him at the apartment building, telling him to keep watch as we went upstairs. It was then I received the call from Emily about the phone and the message they received with the meeting location. Jack claimed it was more intense than his Afghanistan deployment, but I recalled him saying he'd served in Iraq. He said he'd forgotten to mention it, but I grew suspicious and asked him point blank who he really was. Jack kept trying to convince me, but I wanted us to go our separate ways. As he moved in closer, I drew my gun, but in a moment of distraction, Jack attacked me with a knife. I tried to disarm him, but was ultimately overpowered and subdued by him, and he sent the meeting location to Sutter. He dragged me into the elevator at gunpoint, threatening to kill me if I didn't reveal my recognition codes, but I refused to tell him. Just then, a man with 2 muzzled dogs entered the elevator. I discreetly removed a muzzle before attacking the man, driving the dogs into a frenzy. Jack finally had to shoot a dog after it attacked him. He pulled me to my knees and demanded I recite the rules, but I spat in his face. Just as he was about to shoot me, Jud attacked him and was knocked down, but the dog owner shot Jack before letting his dog tear him apart. A little later, Emily was called to the area where the children were exposed to the virus and witnessed its deadly effects firsthand. She met me at the rendezvous point, where other agents were preparing for, Jud to pose as a courier. I was worried for his safety, feeling guilty for dragging him into this mess, but Emily said he'd be fine, and Mercer wouldn't detect him. Jud himself was excited to be involved, but I told him to focus and asked him to repeat the message to me. Meanwhile, an MI5 sniper was eavesdropping on our conversation. Soon, everyone was in position, and Jud walked out onto the pier to await Mercer. Emily pulled me aside. She revealed she'd seen an MI6 file on the Paris bombing and discovered there was a 90-minute delay between when I subdued the prisoner and when French police were alerted, meaning someone in the CIA wanted the bombing to happen. I was stunned to hear this, and also learned that among the dead was a CIA whistleblower. I was both shocked and relieved, as I had been tormented by those losses for so long, only to learn now that it had never been my fault. Hunter's team found a bullet at the scene of the van shooting. It belonged to a very special rifle that only British forces had access to, and they intended to investigate further. I was watching, Jud from the MI5 van when I saw what looked like wires running under the pier. I got worried about Jud and hurried out onto the pier to check it myself. Meanwhile, the CIA received word from the British Armed Forces that a man named John Wilson had checked out a rifle on the day of the shooting, the sniper from earlier. Just then, Wilson disconnected his direct feed before shooting down the other 2 snipers. I saw the feeds start to cut out one by one and started calling in my reports, but Wilson told me everything was fine before advancing on my car. I checked the wiring but found nothing unusual. But just then, a boat arrived at the dock, and I hid underneath as a man, presumed to be Mercer, approached Jud. Emily received a call from the CIA regarding Wilson. The man speaking to Jud turned out to be Sutter's hitman, and after receiving the message from Jud, he abruptly shot him in the neck. Emily attempted to abort the mission, but she was ambushed by Wilson, who killed everyone in the van. I overheard Sutter's henchmen receiving an address over the phone, and once things had calmed down, I tried to help the dying Jud, but Wilson finished him off. He intended to shoot me, but Emily fired at him, forcing him to flee. Sutter's henchman, now posing as a delivery man, met David Mercer and gave him the green light to proceed with his terrorist act. Meanwhile, Mercer's young courier had arrived at a building and planted devices in the ventilation system. As he left, we saw that the building was, in fact, a stadium, slowly filling with spectators for a football match. We see Sutter arrive at a closed restaurant and meet Lash, the mastermind behind this entire plot. He plays a phone call between Mercer and the courier, who is starting to falter because of all the children around. Mercer tells him to be strong and start the timer, but the young man can't do it. Lash had a solution ready, and an assassin quickly and brutally killed him. As Lash and Sutter continued to plan, I made a sudden appearance and shot Sutter in the trachea, finishing him. I confronted Lash for playing games with me, firing a warning shot next to him before pulling him to his feet. I demanded to know the target, but he refused to say. He revealed that after realizing Khalil had gone soft, he had devised a plan to manipulate Mercer until I interfered. Then, he faked his death to have me continue digging and for Jack to approach me. I also revealed that I knew about the Paris affair, but Lash thought it was necessary to eliminate a traitor. While talking, I removed the magazine from my pistol and pointed the gun at him, demanding to know his objective. Lash realized the gun was empty and pushed me away before escaping by car. But it was all part of my plan, and I drove off in pursuit. At the stadium, the football match was about to begin. Lash went to an abandoned building next to the stadium, where he met his assassin, who handed him the device's detonator. Satisfied, he intended to pay the assassin. The assassin left, unaware that I had slipped past him. The moment Lash activated the 5-minute timer on the devices, I appeared behind him, gun to his head. He realized he had been tricked, but refused to tell me how to stop the explosion. I fired a shot next to him, which the assassin heard. Lash then revealed his true intentions. He wanted the biological attack to happen so that the Americans attending the match would carry the virus home and force the US government to take the threat of biological warfare seriously. This would allow the government to exert more control over its citizens and access the medical records of millions. While he was talking, I spotted the assassin and opened fire. I hit him, but the assassin threw an explosive grenade, leaving me dangling over a precipice. Lash approached me gloating, showing me that only seconds remained on the timer, but I grabbed him, snatched the timer, before pulling him down to his death. I managed to stop the timer with seconds to spare. After the incident, I spoke with Hunter, who was very pleased with my work. He didn't intend to apologize for treating me as a suspect, but also didn't intend to arrest me and told me to go stop Mercer. In Prague, we see Mercer on a tram, arriving to meet a driver who has just arrived at the rendezvous point. Mercer gets off the tram and is approaching his contact when someone bumps into him, slashing his femoral artery. As he collapses and dies on the steps and his contact flees, it is revealed that the assassin was me, blending into the crowd. Shortly after, Hunter picks me up, hands me a stack of passports, and welcomes me back to the CIA. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more exciting movie summaries like this. See you next time.